Oh, hey there, Sea of Thieves. I love pirates, and you really fucked up, so let me fix your fucking game. It's a little confusing why Sea of Thieves was made as a pirate game, because this really isn't a pirate game. Honestly, I'm not even sure it's a game. It might secretly be a training program for postmen. You know, your bosses tell you to go get a package and deliver it. That's the game. Well, aside from the amazing innovation of having a giant sea monster show up. Yeah, this amazing pirate game's most impressive feature is ripped off from Pirates of the Caribbean. I guess the warning signs are all there. So, let's start off by fixing the game's problems, and then maybe we'll discuss how the game should actually be for anyone considering making a pirate game in the future. So, to start, it's not a pirate game. Sure, yeah. You go and find treasure chests and dig them up from maps, treasure maps on islands, but that's just a thing. You know, they could be tubes of Pringles and nothing would change, except it would be harder to pass off as a pirate game. The one saving grace of the game is the sea, and to an extent, the sailing. It genuinely feels cool to sail with your mates across the sea. It's just a shame you can't own a boat, have nowhere to go, and enjoying sailing gets old after a few minutes. This is lengthened slightly by the combat, but we'll get to the combat later. Let's start with the fetch quest core that is this game. Take it out. Completely. If you really want to make a lazy pirate game that's still enjoyable enough to play, then give the game 4 factions with a base and area of influence. English, Spanish, French, Portuguese. Then put in combat objectives, have the ship captains able to join any factions. After that, you can recruit friends or open your ships to the public, with bigger, more modded ships being able to hold more crew. As you take out enemy ships, you gain points, and you can use those to upgrade them. Finally, when you get to a level where your ship and crew are overpowered, you're forcibly set to the pirate faction. You have an insane bounty on your head, and you're at war with everyone, able to even attack and loot enemy faction bases for upgrade points, perhaps even getting unique ship parts and mechanisms. There. I mean, doesn't that sound like 300 times better than what we got? And I would still consider that to be kind of a half-assed pirate game. And the worst thing is I came up with that just sitting here while I was typing. It wasn't in the original idea, the original script. I thought of a better game than Sea of Thieves in 5 minutes as a kind of stream of consciousness. Now that's some lazy-ass game development if I can think up something better that quickly. Honestly, this barely counts as a seafaring game. The ships you can choose are based on how many people you can play with. There's 0 actual customization options, only cosmetics, nothing substantial. Sea of Thieves is a shitty mobile game in design. 100% of it is designed to distract you from the fact you're bored out of your dome, and in reality, you're just doing nothing. They clearly focused on being able to customize your character and ship cosmetically, which is really pointless. This is the entire basic progression of gameplay. You jump on your ship after getting missions to gather something, animals, chests of treasure, whatever. You go get them, deliver them back to the faction to get slightly longer fetch quests that are exactly the same, so you can buy weapons and equipment, maybe a figurehead or a sail that look a little bit nicer than the ones you already have. But you do exactly nothing new or interesting. A game doesn't need to have upgrades that matter, upgrades that do things, you know, like improve the ship, make them better, but it does feel like these cosmetics are just there to give you the feel of progression. So I've highlighted a few of the numerous problems of this game, and I could go on for hours. But this is about making a good game people would want to play, looking at a decent idea. In this instance, the idea is pirates. So let's do that. And we start by gutting the entire game. Take out the factions, the skeletons, the monsters, the cosmetics. Keep in the islands, the map, and the sailing. The sea's really nice. The islands aren't too bad. They could be a bit bigger, a bit more numerous. We'll get onto that. But the other thing is take the ships out. So, to improve on what we had, on what we got, let's take the basics. The map. Have an entire large landmass that players can form expeditions into, with natives, enemies to loot, temples, all of those things. You know, you can plunder and bring back chests of gold. Have bases where the ships start off, but also give them the ability to start settlements or bases of their own. Being able to operate out of a basic port and even coming back to repair your ship is a fun mechanic and allows for the expansion into base management and trade and even further in updates to the game. If we're having the players gathering chests of treasure, then what do they do with the treasure? There's no difference between delivering the treasure or delivering something else in the current game. Well, there are some fun options that could have been done. Allow the player to trade for upgrades, repairs, money imports. Or possibly, another option, have them bury the treasure. After the treasure is buried, it goes into their funds. They're able to spend the money like it was in a bank. And then, the clincher, if their ship is destroyed or boarded and captured, some of the loot will be treasure maps, which the enemy looting the ship can follow to pillage some of the defeated enemy's coffers. Maybe even including cursed treasures and artifacts. So, that's a basic skeleton that can be built on for the world. What about the ships and the combat? Well, having a mix of ships, some fast and maneuverable but vulnerable, to large and bulky with lots of guns, seems like an obvious option. It's been done so many times, even in games that aren't pirate games, like EVE Online. It's a marvel that this game didn't do it. There seems to be some kind of disconnect where they decided that instead of making a game like that, they were going to make this kind of PvP lobby with really bare bone gameplay mechanics and content. And I think they just assumed that they'd be able to get away with making people have their own fun. Now, in terms of combat, having patch jobs, mending holes and mending the sails, keeping the ship together while it's sailing and going into combat, means that ships will need to earn money to effect proper repairs once they get back into port. With more work on ship damage and person-to-person melee and shooting, you could even add in roles to the ship like doctor, maybe even things like biologist, encouraging exploration and discovery of new species. Perhaps, as an example, an isolated island could have a really delicious animal that becomes popular and expensive once people hear of it. Perhaps even one enemy faction will pay handsomely for it, but the pirates that find it are at war with that faction. You know, they can't directly enter the port, so they can't deliver it to the port for profit, but they can either trade with other pirates who aren't an enemy to that faction, or even trade the location to that pirates for money. Once these things are considered, you almost have like an EVE Online level of possibilities for player-run games, which I think is where the real fun can be found, and which is why it's such a shame that none of this was implemented. In terms of combat, you know, having a little extra work done on the ship damage locations, and I mean, in Sea of Thieves, you get the same holes happening in the exact same places, and you just go and slowly nail a board across it. I think it's actually a perfect example of the laziness that was really apparent in making this game. I mean, it is so basic and crappy, and once you really think about it, it's just like, why couldn't they put some effort into making even the ship combat fun, which is basically the one thing that kept people going in the game. I could highlight ideas also for hours of how to make a pirate game that's fun, but these are a few basic thoughts I figured I'd put out, basically, of what I would love to see should anyone attempt this again. Unfortunately, what we got was a game that isn't a game, let alone a pirate game. I guess if you whittle Let Me Fix Your Fucking Game right down, in this instance, it comes down to this. I love pirates, and the idea of a pirate game. How do you fix Sea of Thieves? Well, you start again from scratch. Just don't make this abomination. So final thoughts. Well, how did this game get made? How did it get so hyped? And how is it dead already? Well, I can't answer how the game was made, or who thought it was really a good idea. I can answer how it got so hyped, and how it's already so dead. Streaming, and to a lesser extent, videos by popular creators. Now, it's very easy to have fun with friends in this type of game. It's a framework. It's a skeleton with which you can highlight your antics with your friends, add in a little bit of light roleplay, pretending to be pirates, you know, dicking about, doing a bit of PvP. You know, you can edit that down, especially with videos, and make it seem very fun. The second you play it solo or with randoms, you realize it's just a lazy, cheap pile of crap. And the nature, especially with the more hardcore entertainers, is that they find these games that they'll play for a couple of weeks and then they'll stop playing. So you have kind of a rush of people being like, oh, everyone's got to play this game, and then there's not much to it, there's no content, and people move on. And that's how the game died, and how it got so hyped. Now, this final part, there's no real way to fix this, except for me to say, and all of us to remember, that just because entertaining people can make the best out of a pile of crap, that doesn't mean we should jump into it ourselves. And especially, we shouldn't be paying for the experience.